Welcome to the 20-Minute Talk Show. So excited to introduce Bill Giorgio. We have just 20 minutes, so 20 minutes starts now. So thank you so much for joining us. So tell me about your journey becoming an advisor.
It has been a journey. It's been fun. So would you like me to start from the early days of my career?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please do.
So I started out as a school teacher in Newark, New Jersey, and I did that for almost 6 years. And at nighttime, I worked in the restaurant business to supplement my income. I was recruited out of the restaurant business by a company from Brazil that sold what we would call in America Formica. And that was the beginning of a sales career for me. And I realized, well, Formica is not very much fun. So I investigated industries that were growing, and it was a very simple solution. My passion lies in, among other things, movies. So I was lucky enough to land a job with Showtime, where I worked in sales for 8 years and was recruited by Starz and Encore here in Denver. And with good fortune and good leadership and lots of really good mentors, I became the senior vice president and as a head of sales for the cable and satellite divisions. How I became an advisor was I had spent 21 years in the industry, and I loved my job at Starz and at Showtime until I didn't anymore. And I realized at my age, life is short. So I had done well enough where I had the good fortune to be able to make a decision that said, do whatever the hell you want. And I did. So I've had a journey for the last 6.5 years where I've been involved with lots of startups. And like most young entrepreneurs, of which I know I'm not young, I'm far from it, but like many entrepreneurs that are starting out, I had several failures. And what I realized was the same keys to success in business are relevant to startups. It's not necessarily the product and how good the product is and the idea, but it's the quality of the people that you're working with. Do they have vision? Are they trustworthy? Are they energetic? Do they have good morals? Are they fun people? Is the passion appropriate with what they're trying to accomplish with their products? And those were the lessons that I took a couple of years to learn. So now the projects that I'm involved in, I have great comfort with, and I'm really enjoying them. So like many young entrepreneurs, since I left the corporate world where I had lots of structure and support, especially financially, I was an independent, and I made a lot of the same mistakes I made early in my career.
Wow, that's amazing. What an amazing journey. So through that journey, did you develop a lot of relationships, and who did you develop those relationships with?
I think the main reason I was successful is I figured out that business is mostly about relationships. It's not what you know, it's who you know and how you nurture relationships to accomplish common goals. Salespeople get really bad reputations because they're considered salespeople. Well, they're not really, they're consultants. And the more you listen to people and the more you understand what their needs are and respect them as human beings and find a commonality in what you're trying to accomplish between your companies and products and services, it becomes much easier to become successful. So I got into the cable TV business at 35 years old, and I didn't go to the best college. I went to a place called Jersey City State. When I mentioned that to people, they said, well, isn't that a prison? I said, of sorts, but it was actually a very good teacher's college at the time. And I was kind of behind the eight ball. So my motivation was to associate with people that, from whom I could learn, and people that I can raise my game dramatically by observing them and learning from them. But I was also fortunate to work for some really high quality people. So the answer to your question is relationships, hard work, planning, and then what will appear to be the hard part of getting a deal done, for example, is not. The hard part is executing and managing and living up to the aspirations of your partners, your business partners, and your customers, and making whatever deals you cut with people a success. That's the hard part, because it takes a lot of execution and management of relationships at all different levels within different organizations and verticals.
Wow. Speaking of relationships and developing relationships, could you give me the name of, like, say, the top three people that really inspired you the most?
This is going to sound corny. Ultimately, it was my mother. My mother
Really?
was a Renaissance woman, had 7 kids, didn't go to college, but was an artist. I'll just tell you a very, very quick anecdote. I remember when I was in grammar school, often I was unprepared. My mother, while she's sending 7 kids off to school, would write poems for me for the various holidays that we would be celebrating in public school back in Jersey City, New Jersey. And Lincoln's birthday or the first day of spring, my mother would write poems, several stanzas that on the fly that I would have to remember on the way to school. And I always got A's with these last minute projects. She also taught me some bad habits, but you can get away with not a lot of good preparation. But she was my first inspiration. I worked for a gentleman named Q Spalding, the best leader I'd ever worked with. What I learned from him is that what separates good leaders from great leaders is humility. We're looking at this election right now, and what you're not finding out about our candidates, especially Donald Trump, is a complete lack of humility. So our times probably allow for that, but Q was a great leader. He was very humble, never, ever needed to take credit for successes, but made sure that the people who worked hard and earned accolades got them and rewarded them in very meaningful ways. I loved working for and with Q Spalding. This is going to sound crazy as well. I could think of 10 other people in business that I really had great admiration from and learned from, but I'm going to do something kind of stupid. A friend of mine that I grew up with, his name is Tony Mealy. Tony worked in the post office as a mail handler for 30 years. He retired at 55 years old and went back to college at 56 years old and got his teaching degree. And he's been teaching for 9 years, and he's one of the highest rated teachers in Union City, New Jersey, because of his passion. But I mention him because he lives the life of a very rich man, and he basically works on a very low salary, and he's one of the happiest people I know. I admire him because during 9/11, he was the first person to go to work when there were concerns about anthrax, and Tony never hesitated, if you remember specifically how anthrax was a major threat after 9/11. And Tony was the guy that I considered a great American and demonstrated what values are about in hard work. So he's just a personal friend of mine. We stay very close. Again, I can mention several other leaders, but I think it's not just about business. It's the lessons you learn in life from the people with whom you associate over time.
Wow, how so inspiring. How things have, where your inspirations have come from. This is amazing. So I'm wondering, what's your goals for the next, say, 5-10 years?
I haven't thought about them. I've met my goals. I do.
Really? So you have no regrets? You're completely
No.
satisfied where you're at?
No, never. I am telling my wife that my gravestone should say those two words, no regrets on it. It's logical. You cannot change the path. You can only learn from it. So the way I look at this in life is everything that has happened in my life, both good and bad, and a lot of bad things have happened, have taken me to this moment in time where I can only look forward and say thank you for what I have, my family, my friends, my career, some wealth, and the ability to make decisions about my future in a way that doesn't create a lot of stress. So my goals are, the companies that I'm advising, is that the people who are getting those things off the ground, that they are successful, that my children are successful, they're 21 and 23, and that I continue to grow and make new friends and be happy in life and help people where I can. I've kind of gotten the riches. I'm not a rich man, but I've kind of gotten the financial remuneration along the way. So it's not about making money anymore.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. That is so important. I think it's important for everybody. So now you're just at a place you're just kind of taking life easy and I mean, even though their stresses come your way, you're still just at a place you're just kind of taking life easy then?
No, I'm taking it easy. I'm taking it easier. There's a big difference. Everything I do, I take seriously, but I don't have the weight of for example, $600 million budget on my shoulders now. It's a different kind of weight, but you can look at it as a burden or you can look at it as an exercise. Kind of why I lift weights. You just get stronger from carrying things and moving things along and staying active and physical. At the same time, you're intellectual and hopefully inspiring and teaching people to do certain things that you can do well or have done well. And at the same time, learning from those people that have created the idea on which I'm advising. Lots to learn.
That is true. So your way is just continuing to learn and continue to grow and keep yourself inspired and learned to continue to teach others. So do you do a lot of like mentoring one-on-one, or is it still just business-based, or what does your consulting life look like? Is it more of like wanting to grow yourself personally, grow people personally, or through their businesses? What does that look like now?
I think if now I believe I'm aligned with the right people and the right products, that it's not something I have to think about. It almost becomes intuitive as to how I can help them improve what they do, either on an individual or personal basis in terms of specific business skills, or making recommendations on how to approach the market with particular products. It's anything I believe that I can offer in terms of helping an individual become better or the companies that I'm advising. Often I get phone calls, emails, texts, and people connecting with me on LinkedIn asking me for some advice on a career move or a reorganization that is happening in their company. How should I handle it? What do you recommend? Those kinds of things. So there's no real structure to it, but and the companies are very diverse that I'm working with in different verticals and categories. So.
I mean, technology is amazing anymore, what you can do with that. I mean, it definitely changed so much over time, and I know that that's really added to your journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we first had Blackberries, and they were becoming prolific in the early 2000s, I remember going on vacation out of the country and having this initial dilemma. Is this now the bane of my existence, or is it going to enable me? And I made a conscious decision, even though I was traveling with my family, that if I dedicated a certain amount of time every day while on vacation to managing my business and relationships, that when I got back, I wouldn't be paying a price for the wonderful vacation that I had taken with my family. So there's this balance. So technology, the way I look at it, if used properly, is only an advantage. If you don't have discipline nor a strategy to manage it, then people will complain about it.
That's true. Okay, so if, say, you approach a situation where you're not happy with what's going on with work, how do you manage, like if it's something's bothering you, you're upset by a result, how do you manage that?
It's funny that you asked this question, because by nature, I'm an emotional person. And one of the reasons I was very successful is because I can manage conflict very well. But being an emotional person, my initial reaction to a situation may be to respond emotionally without thinking through a good answer. So I just had this conversation with myself this morning. So I've learned that not every decision, not every situation is of great urgency. You will figure out over time what really matters. So if you take time and think about the ramifications of the influence you have and how specifically you're going to affect other people, especially those with whom you disagree, it really matters that you take time, think it through, and then make the best decision for the best reasons. Try and avoid the politics of a situation so that everyone knows where you're coming from, and communicate up and down the ranks so that people understand that the decisions you're making are really in the best interests of the organization. And people will agree with you. Often I hear, well, we're going to agree to disagree. I don't always agree with that because I think there is a right decision and a wrong decision, and how you communicate your point of view or perspective on it, and depending on how much influence you have, it really matters. So you have to think that stuff through.
Wow, that's definitely something I've learned from you, is how to make those decisions. That's fantastic advice. Okay, well, let me see. We've got 3 minutes left. So what are some of the challenges that you've faced?
In the past? Like my career?
Both. Wherever you feel you're led.
I'll tell you through an anecdote. My first year in the job, I was doing my review with my boss. We had just cut some really big deals for Stars for distribution with Time Warner Cable. And we were doing my review on an airplane. And I stopped in the middle of the review. It was a good one. And I asked my boss, Q, why did you and John C., who's an icon in the business, hire me? And they said, because we knew you were insecure. And I said, what? And they said, we knew you were insecure in that you had something to prove. They knew I didn't go to a good college. They knew I did not have the pedigree within the industry, but I had done a good enough job at Showtime where I was noticed. So their thinking was not conventional at all. Go after the Harvard MBA type with a great track record. They were looking for someone that had the desire to improve themselves and to become and enjoy the competition of being number 3 in the marketplace behind HBO and Showtime, my former company. So the challenge was living up to the ability to meet the demands of a very demanding boss, John C. At the same time, I was often doing business with some very, very powerful, charismatic, and successful leaders within the industry. One who became my mentor, a guy named Fred Dressler from Time Warner. So while we were negotiating against each other, I was learning from him because I ultimately was insecure. But today, I feel I'm comparable to anyone in any conversation on almost any issue. And that's because I had great leadership throughout the years, and people empowered me to believe in myself.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. So let's say, so is there like a story or something you would like to share with us about yourself really quick in 40 seconds?
I met my wife in Mexico. The minute I looked at her, I said to myself, this is the girl I'm going to marry. I was 37 years old. I had never been engaged. I had never thought about marriage. And she was living in British Columbia. I was living just outside of New York City. And 9 months later, we were engaged. And I believe the timing of that helped me to become more successful and believe in myself, where she became an enabler because she believed in me so much. So.
Well, time is done. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.